across the far east. But it does mean a bright start to Saturday for many of us. The best of the sunshine across central and western areas, though cloud across the east does filter in more as we head through the day, bubbling up into the afternoon. 1 or 2 showers possible still, these moving their way inland, perhaps a little bit wintry over the higher ground of northern England, northeast Scotland. Temperatures feeling chillier on Saturday and into Sunday. A lot of dry weather to come over the next few days, temperatures around average. See you soon.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're...
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Thursday night, and this is Farage at Live from Exeter. Please welcome your host, Nigel Farage.
Yes, it's Farage at Live here, live in Exeter. We're in the southwest. Are the Tories even vulnerable down here in the blue wall to the Lib Dems and maybe even Labour too? It's a big farming area. We'll ask, have they been left behind? We'll have Farage to Farage, and joining us on Talking Pints, the most famous, the most infamous Southwest politician, yes, Neil Farage. But before all of that, let's get the news.
Hello there, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. 3 men have been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder following the shooting of a high-ranking officer in Omagh. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was targeted by 2 masked gunmen while with his son at a sports centre last night. He's in a critical but stable condition in hospital. Police say dissident group, the New IRA, is the primary focus. and they're now reviewing the threat level. Chief Constable Simon Byrne told reporters a respected colleague is fighting for his life.
Clearly, as an organisation, we are utterly shocked and angered by last night's brazen and calculated attack. John is a father, husband and colleague, and a valued and active member of his local community. John's colleagues are understandably extremely distressed by last night's shooting. However, they remain resolute and committed to bringing those responsible for this heinous crime to justice.
Well, several nations are holding vigils this evening in tribute to Ukraine, almost a year on from Russia's invasion. The Eiffel Tower in Paris has been lit up in the colours of the Ukrainian flag. In London, hundreds of people have gathered in Trafalgar Square to pay their respects, with the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace and the actress Helen Mirren among those giving speeches. A national 1-minute silence will be held at 11 a.m. tomorrow to mark the one-year anniversary of the start of the war. And this breaking news just into us, disgraced singer R. Kelly has been sentenced to an additional year in prison on top of the 30 years he's serving for an earlier conviction. He has received a 20-year jail term on charges relating to child enticement and for producing indecent images of children. However, all of that will be served simultaneously alongside his previous sentence. In June last year, Kelly was sentenced to 30 years in prison after being convicted on racketeering and prostitution charges. He'll be eligible for release around the age of 80. Police are searching for a 33-year-old hiker who's gone missing climbing in Glencoe. Kyle Sambrook from West Yorkshire travelled to the Highlands with his dog on Saturday, and he had been due to return on Tuesday. However, he has made no contact with family or friends since he arrived in Scotland. Police are appealing to anyone with information to come forward. TV online and DAB Plus Radio, this is GB News. Now, it's back to Farage.
We're in Exeter, it's Farage at Large, with a live audience who seem as enthusiastic as ever. I guess there are two big stories today. The first is that the asylum backlog has now hit 160,000. But in response to this, we learn that 12,000 people have been selected, it seems almost at random, and those 12,000 will automatically get refugee status by just filling in a 10-page form. Without actually having to appear to have any hope of proving, in many cases, what their identity is. This way, I think, lies disaster. If you give people an amnesty who come to Britain in the back of a lorry or across the English Channel, all that means is a lot more will come. The estimate for this year was 60,000. I'm guessing with today's news, it'll be nearer another 100,000. And Keir Starmer, who's having a very busy week, has set out his big priorities ahead of the next general election. Yes, Keir Starmer will secure the highest sustained growth in the G7, make Britain a clean energy superpower, build an NHS fit for the future, make Britain's streets safe, and break down barriers to opportunity. Oh, and motherhood and apple pie, and everything else you could ever wish for in the world, and often ask Father Christmas for each year, but it never really happens. Well, there's not much detail there. And by the way, no mention of the small boats from Keir Starmer either. But either way, if you believe the opinion polls, he is at the moment in a very commanding lead. Now, I'm joined by Anne Jobson, councillor and leader of the Conservative group in Exeter. And I wonder, Anne, here you are, as a councillor, a group leader with responsibilities, elections coming up in not all that long, a few weeks' time. You must sometimes look at the London headquarters of your party. I mean, what have we had in the last year? 3 prime ministers, 4 chancellors of the Exchequer, 5 education secretaries. Do you feel let down by the National Party?
No, because you don't concentrate on what's going on nationally. I think there is always going to be a tension between anybody standing for local council, local government, either at district level, as we are in Exeter, or at county level, as in Devon, and hoping that Westminster goes smoothly in those periods immediately before elections. Doesn't always happen.
But it hasn't gone smoothly, has it? That's the point.
But so what we do is then we concentrate on the job in hand. And the job in hand in Exeter, I've got a wonderful team of candidates coming up in May. We've got some really first-class councillors. And that is to deal with the issues that really matter when we're out on the doorstep, day in, day out, asking people what they feel about the simple things of life in many ways, but what people want are clean streets. They want to make sure the litter bins are collected on time. They want to sort of feel that they are being listened to. And that we can do, and we do. And it has proved over the years in Exeter, which has not been easy for a long time for the Conservative Party.
No, I mean, Labour are strong here, aren't they?
But by being seen to be really proactive on behalf of the local residents of our individual wards, where we do able to get things done, we can make that difference. So that's what we concentrate on.
And I understand that fully. And I think in many ways being a councillor can be a pretty thankless task, because very few people say thank you. But a lot of people complain. But the truth is, in local elections, and I know this very well, having led national local election campaigns over the last 20 years, people still vote along national lines. And as you head into these elections and you look towards next year, Devon is a county, OK, Labour are strong here. They've got one of the Plymouth seats. They'll be eyeing the other Plymouth seat. There are constituencies like North Devon, who, of course, long Liberal tradition. I mean, everyone talks about the red wall and the vulnerability of the Conservatives in the red wall. You're pretty vulnerable down here too, aren't you?
There are no such thing any longer as an easy election. I do not believe that to be true. The days when you could go into a constituency and you would know that it was a Conservative constituency or a Labour constituency or a Lib Dem constituency, they have passed. People change. We know that there are people who will vote Conservative for local candidates, but would not vote Conservative in a national election, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So all I can do is to make sure that we are seen, we are visible, that we are consulting with residents, that we promote the issues that matter to them. And that's what we do.
And tell me, Anne, it still matters who the leader of your national party is. A final, really easy question for you. Who was your favourite Conservative Prime Minister? Boris Johnson, Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak?
Well, I'm going to give you a completely different answer, because I was honoured enough to be awarded an OBE, and the Prime Minister who was Prime Minister at the time was Sir John Major. So that's the answer I'm going to give for that reason.
Well, John's a bit old for a recall, I think. Was it a mistake to get rid of Boris?
I don't think there was any choice at the time. I think that...
so you'd like him back?
I know, that's not what I said. I said there was no choice at the time.
No, there is now, though, isn't there?
No, I don't think there is. We have a Prime Minister at the moment, and the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have stabilised the economy. Inflation looks as though it might now be stable. If inflation can then start to drop, and the worst of it is food price inflation, but if inflation can start to drop and then interest rates can start to follow, we can get back down to the Bank of England's target rate. And I think we've got a pair of people there who know that that is important. I'm a great believer in the philosophy of Sir Keith Joseph. He talked a lot about inflation, and the things that he wrote back in the 70s were very true then and now.
And I was a big fan of Keith Joseph. I think he'd be mortified by Jeremy Hunt. But there we are. We beg to differ. And I thank you for joining me on the programme. Thank you very much.
It's nice to meet you.
Now, all over the country, GB News have a network of local reporters, and they go around the regions and they cover important local issues, but ones that have national implication too. Well, here in the southwest of England, we have Jeff Moody, one of our most energetic regional reporters, and Jeff joins me now. Good evening, Jeff. Very good
Energetic.
to
Thank you
see
very
you.
much.
Well, no, you are energetic, and I think it's very important. Anne, of course, was giving the stock Conservative answers, and she has to do that. She's got elections to fight. Truth is, Devon, Cornwall, just down the A30. Labour even won a seat in Cornwall back in '97. They'll be looking at the other Plymouth seat that they don't hold at the moment. The Lib Dems have held North Devon in the past. They've held North Cornwall. They've had seats in southern Cornwall. Do you feel down here that the Tories are vulnerable in the blue wall?
Yes, very much so. George Eustace is another example in Camborne. That looks like it could well go to Labour too.
And he's not going to stand at the next election, is he?
No, that's right.
Yeah, Camborne. And that was the seat that went Labour back in '97.
Yes.
It was Labour till '05, wasn't it?
Yes. I think North Devon's safe. I think Selene Saxby's doing a very good job. She's very visible in North Devon. You see a lot of her around. Social media is very active. But I do think, particularly in Devon, there's real problems for the Conservatives. And you've got to look at why. What's going on? What is it? And I don't think it's just about the national picture. I think that the Conservatives, what I'm hearing from people is that they've lost a sense of rural issues. For years, the Tories have been the one that understand the countryside. They understand the Countryside Alliance, they understand the communities, they understand farming, they understand agriculture. And I think there's a sense coming through now that's changed, that's fundamentally changed.
They want to rewild most of the country, don't they? Which I'm not sure the farming community like all of them. I get the point. Now, a big national issue, and it's coming here to not Devon, but to North Cornwall next Saturday. There was a protest against a migrant hotel up the other day in Knowsley. There have been other protests. There's one coming here, isn't there?
There is, to Newquay. There's a hotel in Newquay that is housing a considerable number of asylum seekers. And people in Newquay have been very, very concerned about this for reasons that you've been highlighting in recent days, weeks and months. There's a massive sense that people don't feel particularly safe on the streets at the moment. That I was interviewing somebody that said the other day that they were a single woman that was followed home. And there is that big concern. But it's become a big political argument because we've got this protest coming up at the weekend on Saturday. There's also a counter-protest, which they're saying that they are protesting against fascism, because, of course, anybody that protests is a fascist.
So the potential concerned parents and grandparents who are going to go onto the streets of Newquay this weekend have been condemned, as I understand it, both by Labour and the Conservatives as being far right.
Also by Cornwall Council. The leader of Cornwall Council has said that these protests are abhorrent, they're bigoted and they're racist. So that is... It's going to be a tinderbox because you've got these two... You've got the people that are protesting and then you've got the people at the counter-protest as well. And, of course, looking at what happened in Knowsley last week or the week before... You can see how that can develop. You can see how it's a
and you'll be there covering this live for GB News this Saturday.
I will, yes.
It's a huge issue. People are very concerned about it. The fact that these people have been condemned before they've even gone out to protest says to me there's a bit of a disconnect between our politicians, not just at national, but at local level too, and the way many, many people feel. Jeff Moody, great stuff. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much indeed. I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes and we'll talk about rural affairs and farming.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, we're here in the southwest of England, and of course, it's a big rural economy down here. Dairying, particularly. Dairying, sheep grazing, these are very, very big activities in this part of the world. So it's very important that Richard Tucker, dairy farmer and the NFU Council Delegate for Devon, joins me this evening. Welcome to the programme. It's been your national conference this week. And interesting that a Labour leader, goes and speaks at a national conference and talks about rural issues, talks about rural crime. Interesting. He also talked to you guys about the importance of net zero. Indeed. And then he talked about food production and, you know, companies buying more British food. Richard Tucker, in your view, is the drive towards net zero and increasing food production, are those two compatible?
It's a tough one, isn't it? We've got a massively growing population in this country globally, and everyone wants to be fed food, fibre, fuel. So does it tally up? If it's a bit hypocritical of us to say that we're just going to import everything that we can't grow here, and we're just exporting our problems, aren't we?
Well, yeah, but we're also putting solar farms up, which is stopping us growing food on land that we could grow food on, surely.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's the mix. You've got to get it in, and we're pressured to look after the environment. As farmers, we don't want to destroy the environment. That's what we work with. That's what we've created over generations and generations, and that's part of the solution as well as the problem. But food production is an extra billion people on the planet in 10 years. That's an extra 200,000 people a day need feeding.
And already we don't have tomatoes in our supermarkets. I mean, I don't know why anybody wants to buy a tomato in February anyway, but that's by the by. But it has put a bit of a focus on food production. You see, also, the Conservative government, since Brexit, have gone for this environmental land management scheme. And the great Boris stood up at the Tory party conference 2 years ago and said, we're going to rewild 30% of the country. We're going to bring back beavers. So they seem to be keener on having beavers building dams in our rivers than food production. I mean, what I'm saying to you is, these environmental programmes, the net zero programmes, seems to me we're going further away from being a food-producing nation, or have I got that wrong?
No, I think you're right, and it takes land resources out of food production. You can't deny it, but is food undervalued as well? And has that been driving the empty shelves? We're seeing it with salad now. But as farmers are businessmen at the end of the day, and there needs to be a margin. And if we're not getting that, then we're not going to produce it. And we saw it with eggs before Christmas, and now I'm just told now that producers have just about in the last couple of weeks actually being paid a price that covers their cost of production.
By the supermarkets?
By the supermarkets.
Because that's been the big gripe, hasn't it?
Yes.
The big gripe from, I know, a lot of dairy farmers in the southwest, the big gripe has been you've not been getting fair money.
Not been getting fair money, cost of production. If we can't keep producing it, we're not going to produce it. We're seeing it with dairy. We were told that we're experiencing over 30% inflation on farms, which dwarfs the 10% that we're seeing in the public. And you try and put in 30%, and that's huge, and it's extremely volatile. And we just want some sort of consistency.
Now,
some sort of
the other big speaker that came to your conference, the Environment Secretary, Therese Coffey. And the view of farmers in the room was that, frankly, she wasn't up to scratch.
She didn't make a lot of friends within the farming community, I think
I love the diplomacy, isn't it marvellous? With Brexit, we've got back control of the levers over British farming. Have the government gripped them properly? Are we embracing Brexit Britain as far as agriculture is concerned?
To start off with, we do need leaders to actually acknowledge when markets are broken. And that's what's happening with the prices at the minute, and why we haven't got we're lacking salad products on the market. The growers in this country of glasshouses, they've had no support in rising fuel costs, so they're not going to run it. They're not going to run them. Can't blame them if they're not going to do stuff at a loss. So Brexit, there's huge concern over trade deals. Okay, it's bringing in food from other parts of the country. There's a huge concern among farmers and NFU members that we can import stuff that can't, from the high standards that we work to in this country, wouldn't be the same.
Is Therese Coffey clueless?
It's hard.
Dear boy, you can take as long as you like in answering this question, because I'm really enjoying this.
She took quite a while to answer in the House of Commons today, so yeah, no, listen, it's...
All right,
there's a lot to learn. She has a lot to learn.
Let's finish on a positive. In a couple of sentences, what in Brexit Britain does the government need to do for British agriculture?
We just need a direction. We need clear direction and clear vision on where we want to go and what we need to do. We're a food-producing country. We've got a great climate here for producing food, and we want to produce food that is nutritious, healthy, and environmentally sustainable for the people of this country and for anyone who wants, and we can export to.
Richard
and we just need an environment to do that.
I wish you and the farming community all the very best, especially here in the southwest, where it matters so much for the economy. And thank you for joining us tonight here in Exeter on GB News. Thank you. In a moment, it'll be Farage to Farage. But first, we'll take a break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel. It's time for Barrage to Barrage. Yes, 5 people have been picked to ask questions. I've absolutely no idea where we're going with this. Steve, fire away.
Thank you, Nigel. Good evening and welcome to Devon. Lovely Exeter. Love the socks, by the way. Couldn't let that pass without a comment.
For those that,
very patriotic.
Yeah, if the camera can't see, then... Excellent. Right. OK, what do you got?
It's a question on the digital ID that our former leader, Mr Blair, and some of his compatriots are rather keen on pushing forward. And I'm kind of wondering why he's getting involved now, because, you know, he is very much an ex-Prime Minister and he's left his mark on the country, undoubtedly. I know many people have mixed views, but I think the views in here are probably, should we say, not overly positive. Certainly mine isn't. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm worried about it, because I think it will lead to other things.
Tony Blair, of course, is now running an enormous business empire. He has a personal net worth of at least £60 million. He has perhaps some of the best connections with big government and big business of anybody alive in the world today. And he is pushing this mass globalist agenda for big government and, frankly, complete control of our lives. We do, to a certain extent, live in a digital age already. You know, we do a heck of a lot of stuff online. It's password protected. We understand that. But this plan is you would have on your phone your digital ID, owned and controlled by the government, on which would be 40 sets of criteria. Your date of birth, your parents, your health records, your tax records, your credit records, your qualifications. I mean, virtually everything.
Your vaccines.
Oh, and I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. Because Blair said a couple of months ago, we need a global digital ID for all the jabs that are to come. So they're clearly planning. I mean, what he knows that we don't know is beyond me. The fact that William Hague joined him in this, I mean, they're not opponents. It's Tweedledum and Tweedledee. And I'm afraid, I feel, that an incoming Labour government will go in this direction. An existing Conservative government will go in this direction. I do not want the state having that amount of control over my life. I don't want to find myself outside the law because something's happened, such as the vaccine. I did take them, but I might have chosen not to. And I think when it comes to government full digital ID, I think at some point, not yet, but at some point, we're going to have to fight the biggest battle we've ever fought for our individual personal liberty and freedom. And I'm going to be in that fight, Steve. I hope you will be too.
It's a pushback.
Absolutely. Thank you. OK. Next up is Bob. Bob, hello.
Thank you.
I run a business of 12 people. SMEs are about to get walloped yet again by Rishi and Jeremy. Should government legislate to force big business to pay sole traders and SMEs within a 2-week period of a legitimate invoice? We are presently being held to ransom by late payment.
Yeah, Bob, this is a problem. You know, the big and the powerful can play games with their cash flow, you know, and their head of their own Treasury Department feels terribly clever because he's kept the money in the bank for an extra 48 hours or a couple of weeks or whatever it is, and they make a bit of a return on that and you get stuffed. Look, I think late payments are a massive problem for SMEs and small businesses, but I think there's an even bigger problem coming on the 15th of March. I think the fact that this government now refuses to look at IR35 rules, which are so damaging to so many self-employed people providing services. I think the fact that corporation tax, your corporation tax is about to go up by 30%, your dividend tax about to go up by 1.25%. And I tell you what, Bob, I know a lot of young business people, particularly younger business people, who are going to Lisbon, going to Milan, going to parts of Europe where they're getting very, very good tax breaks. I just feel this government has no understanding, no connection with genuine entrepreneurs and people like you that provide real jobs in our economy.
Well, small business SMEs are supposed to be the engine room of the economy. And I remember, must be 10 years ago, the Chief Executive Finance Officer of Transco, who no longer exist, saying that they could make more money overnight on the money markets than by transmitting gas from one place to another.
Yeah.
Now, I think big business have a responsibility to help in our dire situation today because they're making the profits, we aren't.
Bob, I've listened to you. GB News will listen to you. We're very much on the side of people like you and sole traders too. I just wish Jeremy Hunt understood small business. I fear that your request will not be met. I don't think they understand.
10 years ago, I wrote to Mel Stride, who's now the tax... I'm going to get into trouble here. Yeah. He wrote back to me saying, we feel that businesses, small businesses, would like to negotiate their own terms of payment with their clients. Yeah. Now, if he thinks I can negotiate with a billion-pound company...
They don't...
No clue.
Bob, they don't understand small business. They've lost connection. Thank you for your point. You made it very well.
Thank you.
OK, Catherine. Hello.
There's a lot of debate at the moment about Kate Forbes' Christian beliefs and how these affect her ability to lead the SNP.
Can you come a little bit closer to the mic and just say that again, if you don't mind? Straight in front of it.
There's a lot of debate at the moment about Kate Forbes' Christian beliefs and how these affect her ability to lead the SNP. Do you think this might be more of a backlash against traditional values about family, for example, rather than the right of any MP to hold their own personal views and be trusted to reconcile those with those of their constituents?
Look, you know, Kate Forbes is, you know, a wee free, and she has a very strong religious belief, and she wouldn't have voted for gay marriage, and she doesn't believe in sex outside marriage, and she holds strong Christian views. She is perfectly entitled to hold those views in a free country that is actually supposed to be a Christian country. And she's not even trying to impose that upon everybody else. She's just saying that's how I feel. Look, there is a big agenda out there, and it's an agenda out there to break down everything about our civilization. And at the roots of the entirety of our civilization is our Judeo-Christian culture. But I've got some good news for you, Catherine, and that is Nicola Sturgeon pushed it too far. The male who was a double rapist, who turned up in court wearing a wig and went to a women's prison, proved to be the straw that broke the camel's back. And I very much hope that Kate Forbes, Tim Farron, and all of those people who are Christians are allowed to play a role in public life. I really do. Thank you. Jeremy.
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
Nice to see you. Has the time come for there to be a grown-up conversation about where private healthcare and healthcare plans, perhaps similar to how pension schemes work, for those that may want to enter it, but getting relief elsewhere so that they pay towards a pension plan, you know, a health plan, and overall to relieve pressure on the NHS?
Do you know what, Jeremy? The first show I did for GB News back in July, 18 months ago, more than 18 months ago. Our first show I did, I said, private healthcare will boom in this country because the NHS backlogs are becoming too big. And rather than, we now demonise people. Oh, he's got private healthcare, isn't it terrible? Rishi Sunak, do you have private health cover? Have you been to a private doctor? Well, I did once, but I didn't really mean it. It's unbelievable. What he should be saying is, yes, do you know what? My wife and I are very fortunate. We're well off. We're able to have private health insurance. We're able to go to private doctors and surgeons. And every time we do that, we relieve pressure on those who can't afford to have private doctors. The whole debate, Jeremy, on this is wrong. We will never get to grips with the NHS, with a population exploding the way that it is, unless we encourage people to take out their own private schemes and we give them actually a degree of tax relief and encourage them to do it. I believe in that 100%. I think you're dead right.
Yeah, thank you.
I do. OK. And finally, Sue. Hello.
Hi, viewers. Could the GB News presenters and reporters start a new political party with authentic principles and hopefully somewhere in the centre-right? I can't recognise a party of that ilk at the moment. They all seem centre-left mixed with green.
Yes, there's a lot of green about, isn't there? There really is. And some of it, of course, very well-intentioned, but kind of, why are we making everything so expensive for ordinary people and ask them to put heat pumps on their homes and everything else, when between China, Indonesia, and China, India, Indonesia, they're going to burn 8 billion tonnes of coal this year. It seems almost terribly self-destructive. So if everybody on GB News, if all the presenters on GB News left and formed a political party, there'd be no GB News. So I don't think that would necessarily be a great idea. But I do think, and I hope you agree, that whilst people who present programmes on GB News have their own opinions, I think we allow people from the left, from all across the spectrum, to come on this channel and have a fair say in an open, honest debate. And I think we're doing pretty well with that. On the centre-right, well, Richard Tice's reform is plugging that gap and making progress. One poll this week put him on 10%. So, it can feel at times, for people of a small c conservative disposition, that it's all rather depressing. But I just think our political class have become even more out of touch than they were before Brexit. And something will give, Sue. Something will change.
I hope so.
Maybe you'll be part of it.
Well, maybe. You've got a head start, though, haven't you, with you, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Michael Portillo.
Yeah, well, well. As long as I just hope the management aren't listening to this, otherwise the station will be gone. Sue, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everybody. And in a moment, it'll be time for Talking Pints. I'm going to be joined by a man who has become the most famous, the most infamous politician and public figure in the South West in the last year or so. Neil Parish will be in the hot seat in just a moment.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Well, now for the best part of the show, undoubtedly. It is Talking Pints with our new GB Muzz Talking Pint glasses, which you can get on the website online, which after this interview, Neil Parish may well choose not to do. I don't know. Neil, welcome to the programme, Neil Parish. Now, third-generation farmer, dairy farming, dipped your toe a little bit into local politics, being a councillor, and then suddenly you and I arrive at the same time in Brussels and Strasbourg as members of the European Parliament, me from UKIP, you from the Conservative Party. Hell of a... I mean, you know, having lunch in the members' dining room in Strasbourg is quite different to getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to milk the cows, isn't it?
Yeah, when I first got elected, they pictured me on a bale of straw, and then they sent me up and down the escalators in Strasbourg to Bolero, you know, and it's so I'd been sort of plucked from the farm straight into the European Parliament. But it wasn't quite like that. But it was different, as you know, and of course it was fascinating in the end, chairing an agriculture committee with 27 countries. You know, you try and please some farmers in one county, you try and please farmers across 27 countries and 27 different systems. It's very, very interesting and a great challenge. And I enjoyed it, even though very difficult.
I remember on the first day there, listening to you, and you did go in with quite a strong Eurosceptic frame of mind, didn't you?
Definitely, yeah.
Did you stay that way throughout 10 years there? Because a lot of people go and they become intoxicated by the power, the chauffeur-driven cars, the expenses, the MEP's lifestyle. Did you become more pro-European in that time?
But a little bit, perhaps. But I
thought so.
I managed to keep. But no, I managed to. No, But seriously, I did also manage to keep the scepticism, because although when it came to the referendum, I voted Remain and campaigned Remain, but I still
something happened to you, Neil.
Yeah, I don't know, but I could still understand why people didn't want the rules, the regulations, and everything with it. But as far as I was concerned, sort of farming in this part of the world, there was no doubt that there was within, you know, the European system.
And farming was literally split 50-50, wasn't it? I mean, farming was.
I think farmers were roughly voted in a very similar way to everybody, and I would argue with farmers sitting around a table, if you vote for Brexit, you will be worse off, and they'd roll their eyes and say you're probably right, but we're voting for it anyway. So that was the end of the argument. But I think, you know, what we need to do now is, I mean, what I am as a Democrat, and at the end of the day, I lost the argument. We got out, but we are not making Brexit work, are we? We're not producing the food we should be doing. No. We're not actually controlling our borders properly. We're not actually looking at
He sounds more Eurosceptic than me now.
We're not looking at the food and the imports that comes in from Europe, and yet they're checking all of ours. You know, we're not going to get the protocol sorted out in Northern Ireland unless we actually do a little bit of checking ourselves. And don't worry, I was saying this in Parliament before I left. I mean, as you know, when I chaired a select committee, I didn't take any prisoners.
No, we will come to you leaving Parliament, I promise.
I rather thought you might.
Of course, did your 10 years as an MEP, got this absolutely plum seat, you know, safe Tory country, Tiverton, Honiton, massive Conservative majority. You, in Parliament, did what you've done in the European Parliament. You got involved in agriculture, rural affairs. I'll give you credit for one thing. You stuck to that great rule. You only got involved and spoke publicly about things that you actually understood. And it's a shame that...
It's a rarity.
Well, it's a rarity because actually you had a career before going into politics. You knew about something.
Yeah.
Most MPs don't seem to know very much at all, to me. And it was all going swimmingly, Neil, for you. It was all going very well, and you probably, you know, could have stayed on as the MP for that constituency as long as you'd wanted, in effect. And then these rumours started to swirl in the media that somebody might have been watching inappropriate pornography on their phone in the House of Commons. I wasn't sure it was true. But in the middle of all of this, you were interviewed on GB News by our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. I want to remind you of that interview, if I may. We're going to show...
Chief Whip is looking into them from a female minister about another Conservative frontbencher watching pornography on his phone. I mean, frankly... Whoever it is, I mean, surely they would have to have the whip removed, wouldn't they?
You know, I don't think there's necessarily a huge culture here, but I think it does have to be dealt with and dealt with seriously. And I think, you know, that's what the whips will do in our whips office.
Well, that was Neil Parish, being interviewed, saying whoever it is, when they catch the culprit, they've got to come down on a time. Neil, that was not your greatest moment, was it?
No, it wasn't. I was, you know, I was in denial, and, you know, if I could replay and not have done that, I would do it 1,000 times. You know, I wouldn't...
You said it was an error?
Yeah, it was a total error. I took the right decision. I left.
If you'd fessed up earlier, could you have saved your career?
I don't think so. I think they were sort of, you know, it was the wrong thing to do, the wrong place to do it, and it was absolutely the right thing to go. But, you know, have I regretted it? You know, would I have apologised? I do unreservedly. So, but like I said, what I want to do now, as you move into 23, is yes, I made a terrible mistake.
Yeah, I mean, how did you? I mean, I can assure you, I've had some pretty tough times with the press over the years, repeated tough times with the press. And I always thought at the end of it all, and, you know, some of the stuff they wrote was completely untrue. Some of the stuff they wrote was unfortunately true. But you always think about it, all right, listen, you know, I've put my head over the parapet in public life. I can deal with it. Yeah. But the impact on the family is, I think, quite difficult, isn't it?
Yeah,
how did you cope with it?
If there was one hero of the piece, it was definitely my wife. She's only about 5 foot tall, but my goodness me, you know, she is determined. And she said about me that I've every emotion in her whole body I have, you know, I've had that effect upon her, but the one thing I've done is never bored her, and so.
Oh, I'm sure of that. I don't want to ask some of the details.
So therefore, you know, I mean, I pay huge tribute to Sue because she supported me through all my political career, and it was one which it was actually a good political career where I did work very hard for my constituents and for farming and food. So, you know, it's a stupid way and a very bad way to finish. But like I said, can I say now in public, if I hadn't had my wife's support through it, and what we do have, even now, all being well, as my mother would always say, a good marriage. And in many ways, that is more important than a political career. However painful it might be to leave it behind.
You could, Neil, have just gone back to the farm and just carried on farming, which you obviously love doing.
Yeah, I do.
Anyway. But you've decided not to hide under a rock. You've decided, and in fact, you were arguing quite passionately on political issues earlier. Is there a second coming of Neil Parish in politics?
I will have to see, but I would hope there might be. Will people forgive me? I don't know, and I have to, ask that in all sincerity. But I think, that the producing food, you've got the Ukrainians being invaded by Putin. It's not Russia, it's Putin. You need food. You've got North Africa starving if you're not careful because they get their wheat from the Ukraine. We need to produce more food. We can have a good environment. We want to get, I want to create a revolution where we actually have home rule for Devon, Somerset, might even talk to the Cornish.
Impossible.
That would be more difficult. But seriously, I think we've not had a fair deal in the West Country for years, and I'm not just saying this now because I'm out of Parliament, because I said it when I was in Parliament. I used to say, many a debate, I said that many of the civil service and many of the government think that Bristol is the southwest, and there is nothing beyond it. We all the way from Bristol to the toe of Cornwall is a very long way. And Devon is a great county. Somerset's a great county. We've got great counties of the West Country, and I think we deserve better. I think we need to deserve better on education and health, but we also need to have that great food because people come to this part of the world as tourists. They like to eat our food.
We want our cream teas.
You do.
Absolutely.
And we want to make sure we put the cream on the scone first. And don't ever have jam on it first, you see.
When we go down to Cornwall and do a show in Newlyn, which we're going to do, they'll disagree very strongly with that.
And Cheryl Murray and I disagree hugely.
Robert Mugabe banned you from entering Zimbabwe. Very, very well done, you, Neil Parish, on that point. He did
not like my analysis of his election, his corruption, his forcing people to vote, and of course, destroying a country. And of course, before I left, Putin did actually ban me from Russia as well.
Well done.
So I had a couple of.
Well, on that note, Neil Parish, we'll say thank you for coming on Talking Pints.
Thank you very much.
OK. We are very nearly done, but we're going to finish. We have a dairy farmer called Philip Greenaway, and he is going to sing for us, Take Me Home, Country Roads. Take it away.
Take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia. Mama, take me home, country road. And my memories gather round her, miner's lady and stranger to new water, dark and dusty, painted on the sky, misty taste of moonshine, teardrops in my eye. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. Southwest England, so popular. Take me home, country road. I hear a voice in the morning hour. She calls me. The radio reminds me of my home far away. Then driving down the road I get a feeling that I should be back in Exeter. Exeter, country roads, take me home to the place I belong. Southwest England, mountain mama, take me home, country roads, country roads, take me home to the place I belong. Southwest England, it's so popular, so take me home, country roads.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Over the next few days, high pressure remains firmly in charge. We will see some rain pushing south over the next 24 hours, but generally settled picture is what we will see. And we can see that high pressure on the synoptic chart just sat to the west of us at the moment, allowing these weather systems to slowly push south, but generally weak in nature, so the rain should be light and patchy. The rain already across Scotland, northern England as we head through the evening time. Clearer skies further south, particularly central southern parts of England and Wales, will mean temperatures tumbling here. -1 or -2 Celsius will lead to a patchy frost. Under the cloud and patchy rain elsewhere holding up well above freezing. But it does mean a cloudy start to Friday morning across central and northern parts of the UK. Early brightness limited to the far south. And through the day, this weather system slowly pushes its way southwards. We will see some patchy rain along it at times, but it will brighten up behind this